Students, we have covered so far the first section and the second section of T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland. The section 1 titled The Burial of the Dead, and the second section was A Game of Chess. Now it's the turn of the third section, that is the Fire Sermon. So let's start. The Fire Sermon is the third section of The Wasteland. It presents the spiritual and moral decay of modern society through images of urban corruption, broken relationships, and mechanical sexuality. And the title refers to the Buddha's sermon on renouncing the fires of desire, hatred, and delusion. Eliot here contrasts this ideal of spiritual purification with the modern world trapped in lust, materialism, and emotional emptiness. Through fragmented voices, mythical allusions, and stark imagery, the section reflects a civilization that, that has lost its inner purpose and is in a desperate need of cleansing and renewal. So, students, for our convenience to have a better and a deeper understanding of this section of the poem, I have divided into several subsections, though they are linked to each other, there is no doubt, but to have a clearer understanding of the entire poem, all the poetic devices, allusion, symbolism, imagery, and other things that are there, and of course the themes, we cannot forget them, right? We cannot really ignore them. So in order to have a clearer understanding of the poem, I have divided into further sections. As you can see on the screen in the first slide, I have kept only first to 14 lines. So let's just start understanding that. The river's tent is broken, the last fingers of leaf clutch and sink into the wet bank, the wind crosses the brown land unheard. So see the images here. There is, the image of quite desperate images are there, which are not really linked to anything. There is an image of river and the tent on that river is broken, and of course, finger is there, last finger of leaf. So all are different images, separate images. They are not really combined, or can't there is no coherence here, there is no wholesomeness here in these, in this image. So clutch and sink into the wet bank, the wind crosses the brown land unheard. So here it seems that he is beginning the poem with an image of desolation and decay. And this river's tent, it refers to the green canopy of trees and leaves that once arched over the river, that we it has, this river is has been mentioned say so many places in the poem, and the river is Thames, and it is like a canopy, it has cover, this, there is a green cover of trees and leaves over the river. And now the canopy is gone, that tent is gone, and the leaves are falling and they're sinking into the muddy banks, because without the trees, without any without any something to hold on to the soil, the soil cannot stay near the banks. It will come, it will get mixed with the water, and the water will become extremely muddy, and that is why the word brown land is mentioned here. So this the land has lost its vitality, and because it has turned all brown, because it got mixed with the soil, with the sand, right? And even the wind moving across, it seems lifeless and silent. So these three lines, it sets the tone of spiritual dryness and moral decay, which is one of the major themes of the poem. The next we hear that the nymphs, they are departed. They have left the land. So nymphs here are river goddesses from Greek mythology, which are, and these nymphs are basically associated with beauty, youth, and vitality. Their departure, it symbolizes that there is a loss of natural beauty, loss of innocence, and of course the departure of magic and romanticism from modern life. That what made human life human, it is the feeling, it is it is our emotions that makes us more human. or that makes a human, right? So now this has departed. All these things have departed. Now what are we left with? The life is left which is spiritually sterile. Thus the civilization has become spiritually sterile. Now sweet themes run softly till I end my song. Here there is a sudden turn here, and this is a direct reference to Edmund Spenser's Prothalamion, which was published in 1596. Spenser used this same line in a song of celebration about a wedding day, about a happy wedding. But Eliot here, he is using it ironically. Because instead of love and celebration, the modern Thames, the river, flows through spiritual wasteland. And this song is no longer a joyful song, but a mournful. The next line is: the river bears no empty bottles, sandwich papers, silk handkerchiefs, cardboard boxes, cigarette ends, or other testimony of summer nights. Now, these lines they describe modern life. But how? Because the river is usually littered with trash left by people who come for leisure or sexual escapades during the night. Now, even those signs are gone. This symbolizes an extremely deeper idea that even pleasures have become barren and meaningless. People once looked for momentary enjoyment, but now even that culture is fading, it is long gone. And what is remaining here is it is the spiritual barrenness, it is the sterility, it is the destruction, desolation, and an eternal decay. The nymphs are departed, and their friends, the loitering heirs of city directors departed, have left no addresses. Not only the nymphs, not only the nymphs, but the wealthy young men also, who were the playboys or the pleasure seekers, they've also left the city, and they are described as heirs of city directors, which means the rich business class youth of London has also left the city and they have left no addresses. It suggests that they disappeared without a trace, leaving behind no legacy, no purpose, no values. So here Eliot is pointing out how modern materialistic society has nothing meaningful to offer to the coming or the future generations. By the waters of Lemon I sat down and wept. Here is a direct reference to Psalm 137, which describes the Israelites sitting by the river of Babylon and weeping in exile. This lemon, it refers to Lake Geneva in Switzerland, where Eliot himself stayed during mental health treatment. And the line means it can be interpreted as modern man is exiled from meaning, faith, and spiritual wholesome. Just like the Israelites were exiled from their homeland, this is Eliot's personal cry of spiritual loss. Sweet themes run softly till I end my song. Sweet rain themes run softly, for I speak not loud or long. Now, this line is repeated again, and here the poet says he will not speak loudly or for long because he does not have any passion, belief, or conviction left to speak loudly and for a longer period of time. Now, what does this actually emphasize? It emphasizes, it stresses upon, or it highlights weariness and hopelessness of the modern man. But at my back in a cold blast I hear the rattle of the bones and chuckle spread from ear to ear. Now, see the cold blast, and here he is hearing. Perhaps his eye is Eliot himself, and it could be another person, the speaker also. For here, he is hearing some cold blast that happened. Then there was a bombardment somewhere, and he could hear that thing here also. And the bones are they are rattling, and there is a chuckle. Chuckle is a loud laugh spread from ear to ear. So this is actually it seems like an image of a death. Rattle of bones suggests skeletons or corpses, and the chuckle hints at a mocking laugh. It seems as if death is close behind the poet or the speaker, and there is a sense of, decay, doom, hopelessness in this. The mocking laugh suggests that modern society downfall is almost ironic. Man destroyed himself through moral and spiritual collapse. Now, this modern man is, accusing God of, bringing this downfall upon modern man, but it is man himself who destroyed through their immorality and spiritual sterility. So now this passage, the whole stanza, it reflects, I would say, four things. There's a loss of nature, loss of spiritual value, decadence of modern urban life, and death like emptiness of civilization. And Eliot, in this stanza, he beautifully blends classical references of nymphs, Psalm, Spenser, to show how the glorious cultural past has vanished and leaving, and it has left a spiritually barren modern world. Now let's look into the next stanza of, the section 3, the fire sermon of the wasteland. A rat crept softly through the vegetation, dragging its slimy belly on the bank. Now, when you read the words like crept softly through the vegetation and the slimy belly, it is a very graphic and unpleasant image, and it shows how nature has reduced to filth and decay. As we know that the rat represents pollution, filth, impurity, and corruption. So it is this contrast, stark contrast to the earlier mythological world of nymphs, which was beautiful, exotic, and now the beauty of the Thames, because here there is a reference on the bank. So this bank is of the river Thames. So the beauty of the Thames has now decayed into a dirty canal which has got infested, with rats. While I was fishing in the Dunnel Canal on a winter evening round behind the gas house, the speaker, partly Eliot and partly Tiresias as narrator, is shown. So he's sitting in a polluted, dull industrial environment behind a gas factory, which is the symbol of, what does it symbolize that he's fishing in a dull canal? It symbolizes, industrial ugliness. So, students, did you notice one thing? That in the previous stanza we saw that Eliot, or perhaps this narrator Tiresias, was sitting on the banks of the river Thames, right? And here again he's sitting in the banks, but this time he's sitting in the, he's fishing in the dull canal. So there's a stark difference, right? So this reflects the spiritual depression and bleakness of modern life. And nature here has it's been replaced by machinery and lifeless industrial surroundings. Musing upon the king, my brother's wreck, and on the king, my father's death before him. So it is, there is a reference to two very famous, one is the mythology, right, and the another is by Shakespeare. So from Shakespeare, it is from the play The Tempest, and from the mythology it is Kingfisher or Fisher King mythology, right? It implies a ruined lineage, the fall of leadership, and a world where rulers have failed and the land symbolically, is barren. We learned about this, the mythology of Kingfisher, so you may refer to that, lecture. In The Tempest, Alonso loses his son and ship. In Kingfisher legend, the land becomes a wasteland because the king is wounded. Okay, so Eliot merges these legends to symbolize. Now, what does he want to symbolize here? That the ruin of modern civilization and the spiritual sterility that the king, who is the leader, perhaps the king, here it can be the leader, it can be the society, or the tradition or culture could not prevent. Right? White bodies naked on the low damp ground, and bones cast in a little low dry garret, rattled by the rat's foot only year to year. So these lines evoke mass death, abandoned corpses, shallow graves. Bodies, they are lying exposed, bones stored seized, carelessly in dry rooms, forgotten and unmourned. Means he's referring to, to the aftermath of World War One, where millions of people, young people, old people, they died, and nobody was there to cremate them or to bury them or to give final perform final rituals for them. So their bodies, they are lying unattended, but who is actually attending to them? It is the rat. That thing only touches them. Only thing that touches them is a rat. And what does it suggest? It suggests again the same things. It's the decay. It's the war trauma. You cannot forget once you experience this kind of a bloodshed. You cannot really forget it, right? And it resurfaces and then resurfaces again and again to torment you, right? So this war, it suggests war trauma. And of course, the anonymity and indifference of modern society toward the death, toward the dead. Nobody takes care of the dead. Nobody is really concerned with the beloveds, the loved one of the dead. So there is there it could be an direct indirect reference, like I've just told you, that unburied victims of modern violence. But at my back from time to time I hear the sound of horns and motors. We shall bring Sweeney to Mrs. Potter in the spring. Now, suddenly, in contrast to this gloomy and bleak scene, we hear cars, horns, and there's a traffic. So this shows the intrusion of modern city life. This is how the modern city life is. Once, even today also. That is why we call it a classic work, because it is relevant today as well, right? The moment you step out of your house, what do you hear the most? You hear cars, you hear, there's a traffic, there are horns constantly honking and disturbing, right? So this is a, shallow and, mechanical life we are actually living in. So Sweeney is a wasteland figure in Eliot's work, which refers to crude and it is, animalistic, representing modern sexual emptiness. And Mrs. Potter is a figure from an Australian soldier's marching song, and used here to symbolize cheap, commercialized sexuality and trivialization of love. Means love has lost its status, and now love is basically on sale. I was recently reading a work by Ellen Badiou, and the title was In the Praise of Love. He was literally petrified and traumatized by, when he saw that love was actually on sale. The flood of dating apps where you you date as many people as you want, and nobody is there to question your morality. So that type of trivialization of love is really really taking modern society uh, you know to the brink of destruction and decay. So this, while here also when we are hearing these cars, horns, and there is traffic, even at that time also, what is at the background? There's death and decay. It remains in the background. Modern society is distracted by lust and mechanical pleasure. Oh, the moon shone bright on Mrs. Potter, and on her daughter they washed their feet in soda water. This is actually a parody of a body army song. In the original, the lines refer to soldiers' love affairs with prostitutes. Now, here Eliot is using it ironically that washing off feet, normally an act of purification, it has also become so cheap and comic. And it reflects how modern love has lost its, sacredness and has become so too, trivial and shallow. Now, there's again, it's written in French. I won't be reading it, maybe because my pronunciation won't be good. And oh, these voices of children singing in the dome. So, what is this poem actually? This is by Paul Verlaine, and the poem titles Parsifal, which is about Holy Grail and spiritual healing. So now Eliot, why he has used it? It's a sacred music of children in cathedral purity. Now he contrasts this purity with the vulgar scene of Sweeney and Mrs. Potter, and because they represent corruption. So this sudden contrast emphasizes how the modern world has turned away from spiritual salvation. So now this next is a bird song, and there's a graphic allusion, and but these sounds imitate nightingale song, but these sounds are in a very distorted form. So what is the key meaning if we just look into the meaning of it? These lines refer to the myth of Philomela from Greek mythology. Philomela, as we have already discussed, that was raped by Tereus or Triu, and had her tongue cut out so she could not speak. The nightingale song is said to be her voice of eternal suffering, because later on she was turned into a nightingale. So he uses this sound here to show civilizations, hidden violence beneath the surface. There's sexual brutality also, and trauma that cannot be fully spoken. So, this line, so rudely forced, makes the violence quite explicit. No, there is nothing more I can actually explain, because these three words, so rudely forced, it speaks for itself. So, thus, even the Nightingale's song, once a symbol of beauty, has become a reminder of assault and human cruelty in the modern wasteland. So, what did we actually learn from this passage? We learned, the themes that there is a moral and spiritual decay, industrial dissolution is there, loss of beauty and purity, meaningless sexuality, trauma, war, and abandonment, failed leadership, and failed leadership and failed civilization. And the symbols that he has used is rat, dull canal behind the gasworks, Sweeney and Mrs. Potter, Philomela. And the techniques that he used was just he actually juxtaposes high culture with low culture, high culture of Shakespeare and Verlaine, and with low culture of soldiers song. Now we see that Eliot has once again called the city of London, an unreal city, as he did earlier in the poem. This phrase suggests a city without spiritual life. It's foggy, dreamlike, artificial, fake, and a modern world cut off from meaning and human connection. And the brown fog reinforces industrial pollution, gloomy atmosphere, moral and emotional dullness. This brown, the color brown, it also appeared just in this section a few stanzas before. So there we saw that Eliot refers to the brown land, which refers to the river, which got soil mixed into it. So the muddy banks of the river was basically called the brown land. So again, it is brown fog here. So now Mr. Eugenides, the Smyrna merchant, unshaven with a pocket full of currants. So this is actually a character based on a real Greek merchant Eliot once met. He once met this person, and he represents commercial worldliness, business interest replacing culture and humanity. And what was his appearance like? He was unshaven, means a rough, hurried, or uncultured. Pocket full of currents, means he is openly defined by trade and business. This suggests a socially dominated by commercial transactions, not values. CIF London documents its site. Now, this is a business shipping term. CIF means cost, insurance, and freight. Documents at site means payment due immediately when documents are presented. So, Eliot uses real trade jargon to show language of love, poetry, and emotion has been replaced by business language. Life has become transactional. Society speaks in the language of commerce. Asked me in a demotic French to luncheon at the Cannon Street Hotel, followed by a weekend at Metropole. So, demotic French, now it means simple and colloquial French, not the elegant French of high culture. The invitation suggests not just a friendly meal, but possibly a sexual proposition, a transaction of or corrupt social encounter. The mention of two hotels, Cannon Street and Metropole, hints at the cheapening of relationships. Modern urban life turning romantic or intimate encounters into hotel bookings. This adds to the poem's theme that modern city life has turned relationships into economic exchanges, lacking emotion, depth, or morality. So overall, this passage, this stanza, it means there is a dominance of commerce in our life, and of course moral emptiness. It showcases moral emptiness of modern life. And there is a decline of high culture, means even French, a language of elegance, is reduced to basic demotic speech. At the violent hour when the eyes and back turn upward from the desk, when the human engine waits like a taxi throbbing waiting. So, this violent hour, it refers to evening. When office workers finish their day, people are tired, stretching their backs, eyes after long mechanical work. Eliot refers or uses this metaphor of human engine, comparing people to machines. Modern life has turned individuals into mechanical workers with repetitive, monotonous routine. The comparison to a taxi waiting and throbbing, it suggests that it suggests physical exhaustion, emotional emptiness, and life that waits rather than lives. I, Tiresias, through blind throbbing between two lives, old man with wrinkled female breasts, can see. Now the speaker here is Thracias, a blind prophet from Greek mythology. Thracias is significant because he has lived both as man and woman, has mythical insight despite being blind, and he can see the inner truth of the modern world. So, besides being between two lives, emphasizes dual identity, male and female, and wisdom gained through suffering as well as transformation. So he becomes a central observer of the poem, witnessing human decay. So at the violent hour, the evening hour that strives homeward and brings the sailor home from sea, the typist home at tea time clears her breakfast, lights her stove, and lays out the food in tins. So the word tins, you please focus this. Evening is traditionally a time to return home to find rest and comfort. But here, what do we see? That sailor home from sea, and it is the evening hour that strives homeward. So, but now, what is happening? But here, Eliot is focusing on a modern typist, a working class woman. She comes home alone now, only now, clears her breakfast dishes because she has nobody at home to help her out, showing disorder and tiredness. Opens food from tins, canned food. Now what does it actually again symbolizes? It symbolizes lack of warmth, mechanical everyday survival. Well, her life is robotic and unfulfilling. This sharply contrasts with romanticized images of home coming from the past. Means, however, when we see old Bollywood movies, what did we actually see? That the father is coming home and there's a family who's waiting for that person, and then they, you know, sit together and have some chat. And this is, I think, the most romantic notion of coming home, that the family is waiting for you, and then you have your dinner together, you spend time with each other, right? But now he is, totally, it has turned topsy turvy, the whole life. Out of the window perilously spread her drying combinations touched by the sun's last rays. So this, combinations are basically undergarments. They hang dangerously outside the window, showing cramped urban living conditions. Means, perilously spread her drying combination touched by the sun's last rays. Means, and now, it also shows loss of elegance, and there is no privacy also. This last rays of sunlight briefly touch them. Means they are living in such cramped conditions. Means you may understand that even the sunlight cannot penetrate, and only the last rays of sunlight, it briefly touch them, adding a sad beauty to an otherwise dull scene. On the divan piled at night her bed, stockings, slippers, camisoles, and stays. Means she has, a small living room, and that room itself is again very small. The divan is both sofa and bed, suggesting poverty and lack of comfort. And this clothes are scattered everywhere, and it makes this scene feel more ordinary, intimate, unromantic, unpoetic. So this is not a Victorian ideal of the feminine domestic space. It is lonely reality. It is the lonely reality of a modern working women. This section continues Tiresias' narration. As the only figure in the myth who has lived as both man and woman, Tiresias becomes a symbolic observer of modern human relationship, especially the loss of intimacy and emotional connection. I, Tresius, old man with wrinkled dugs, perceived the scene and foretold the rest. I too awaited the expected guest. So Tresius introduces himself again. Wrinkled dugs means sagging female breast, emphasizing his dual sexual experience. Because Tresius has seen both sides of human love, he can foresee everything that is about to happen. He watches as the typist waits for her visitor, though without excitement. He, the young man, carbuncular, arrives, a small house agent's clerk, with one bold stare, one of the law on whom assurance sits as a silk hat on a Bradford millionaire. The young man who arrives is a carbuncle man, means suggesting. What does it actually suggest? It suggests red, pimpled skin, unattractive appearance. He is a low status office clerk. His bold self confidence is compared to a silk hat on a Bradford millionaire, means rich looking clothes on someone socially inferior. The comparison exposes the pretentiousness and lack of refinement in modern men. The time is now propitious as he guesses the meal is ended, she is bored and tired. Now he senses that you know that the moment is favorable for him to pursue sexual advances, but the typist is weary, emotionally numb, and uninterested. Endeavors to engage her in caresses which still are unreproved if undesired. The young man begins physical advances. She does not she does not resist, but she is not interested either. The scene highlights mechanical, emotionless sexual behavior, a symbol of the moral decay Eliot sees in modern life. Flushed and decided, he assaults at once, exploring hands, encounter, no defense. Now this man moves aggressively and quickly. She neither participates nor fights back. There is a complete lack of emotional connection or consent. But the act continues due to indifference. This is Eliot's harsh critique of modern relationships, sex without love or humanity. His vanity requires no response and makes a welcome of indifference. The young man is satisfied simply by performing the act. Her lack of reaction doesn't matter. He interprets silence as acceptance. The focus is on self gratification, not mutual intimacy. And I, Thracias, have foresuffered all, enacted on the same divan or bed. I, who have sat by Thebes below the wall and walked among the lowest of the dead. Now, this Thracias, he claims that he has already experienced all these things in the past life through centuries of human existence. From ancient Thebes to modern London, he has witnessed lust, suffering, the decline of values. The scene is not just new for him, it is just another repetition of human degradation. Bestows one final patronizing kiss and gropes his way, finding the stairs unlit. After the act, what does this man do? This young man gives a cold, superior kiss. He leaves in the dark symbolically moral blindness, spiritual darkness, and absence of any affection. So there is no conversation, no affection, no connection, only emptiness. Now, this section continues the scene of the typist after the young man has left. Eliot now shows the emotional emptiness of modern relationship, how sex has become mechanical without affection, devotion, or even regret. She turns and looks a moment in the glass, hardly aware of her departed lover. Means the typist, hardly aware of her departed lover, and this typist looks briefly into the mirror. Mirror means, of course, the glass. She is almost unaware that the man who just had sex with her has left. This reveals lack of involvement, routine of acceptance of such encounters, emotional numbness. Her brain allows one half formed thought to pass. Well, now that's done. I'm glad it's over. She has only a vague, incomplete thought, showing mental fatigue and emptiness. The thought expresses relief, not pleasure. She is glad that the encounter is over. Eliot shows how relationships have lost meaning. Sex is the only thing or only something to endure, not something experienced emotionally or spiritually. One lovely woman stoops to folly and paces about her room again alone. Now, this Eliot here is paraphrasing Oliver Goldsmith's line from The Vicar of the Wakefield, when lovely woman stoops to folly. But Goldsmith's women, feel sorrow and regret after seduction. But here, Eliot's woman, she feels nothing. She's alone again, pacing mechanically in her room. She smooths her hair with the automatic hand and puts a record on the gramophone. Now she is fixing her hair in a robot like manner, showing this a routine behavior, again, dull or monotonous life. She puts a record on the gramophone, another mechanical act. Music serves as a distraction, and it no longer gives her any kind of pleasure. So this image emphasizes modern life's emptiness and how they are going through actions without feelings, and there is fragmentation and spiritually in the spiritually exhausted world. After the emotionally empty scene of the typist and clerk, the poem moves outside into the city. Eliot describes here London again, full of noise, crowds, and urban life. Yet even here, the narrator senses moments of beauty and memory, though they are rare and overwhelmed by modern decay. This music crept by me upon the waters. So, this music here, perhaps, or of course, this is the music that is referring either to the gramophone music from the typist room or some imagined music of the civilization's past. The sound moves gently like water, suggesting something flowing and distant. It may symbolizes memories of a more cultured, refined past, slowly fading, and along the Strand, up Queen Victoria Street. So this is he names real London streets, Strand or Queen Victoria Street. So the music moves through the modern city as if echoing through everyday life. It creates a contrast. modern urban landscape versus ancient cultural echoes. Oh, city, city, I can sometimes hear. Well, it's a cry of emotion, frustration, fatigue, or despair. The speaker hears from time to time faint traces of beauty in the city, but they are always overwhelmed by noise and disorder. Beside a public bar in Lower Thames Street, Eliot moves to a lower, class part of London near the river, and this public bar it suggests a working class atmosphere. There's a lot of noise. There's drinking and nightlife. The pleasant whining of a mandolin. So mandolin is a musical instrument that produces soft, nostalgic music. Its pleasant whining stands out as a moment of beauty in the noisy environment. Again, here, Eliot contrasts modern ugliness versus fleeting glimpses of old world charm and a clatter and a chatter from within. So the sound of people talking, dishes, this clatter is like talking sound, and this chatter is a this talking sound, and clatter is of dishes and glasses and crowded bar noise. So the mandolin's beautiful music is almost drowned out. Now, what does it actually symbolizes? That beauty survives, but is overwhelmed by modern music, modern noise, and superficial conversation where fishermen lounge at night, where the walls of Magnus Martyr hold inexplicable splendor of Ionian white and gold. Now, those fishermen means fish sellers, they sit near the bar on their break. Nearby stands the church of the Saint, Saint Magnus the Martyr, historically known for its beautiful architecture. Eliot describes the church as having inexplicable splendor, Ionian white and this gold. This Ionian, it refers to classical Greek architectural style. This means in the middle of commercial, dirty, noisy London stands a church of ancient, pure beauty. Now, it symbolizes cultural heritage surviving in modern, decay, amid modern decay, and there's a contrast between spiritual grandeur and urban chaos. The central idea in the passage is there's a clash of past and present. Classical beauty of the church, it stands among bars, merchants, industrial chaos. The city is spiritually empty but haunted by its formal grandeur. Fleeting moments of beauty are there, like music and architecture offer brief flashes of hope, but they are overshadowed by urban noise and clutter. There's a spiritual loss also. Modern London has activity. Okay, they're very much active. They're drinking, they are visiting the bar, but there's no meaning. There's culture, but no connection. Beauty exists, but goes unnoticed or unappreciated. In this part of the subsection, section 3 of the Wasteland, Eliot compares the polluted modern Thames with its glorious past. The lines move back and forth between present day London, which is corrupted and industrial, and the Elizabethan era, full of royal pomp, beauty, and celebration. Eliot shows how the river, once a symbol of history, romance, and royal splendor, has become dirty, lifeless, and spiritually empty. The river sweats oil and tar, the barges drift with turning tide, red sails wide to leeward swing on the heavy spar. I mean, this, Thames is personified as sweating. Sweat here is pollution, oil and tar from factories and modern industry. The image shows London as dirty, exhausted, and decayed. Industrial barges move up and down the river with the tide. No life, only mechanical motion, symbol of modern, monotony and soulless labor. And there is a description of red sails, description of barges with red sails, and there is a shifting direction as the wind drives them. So still industrial. There's no romantic ships of poetry and adventure. The barges wash drifting logs down Greenwich Reach, past the Isle of Dogs, Vela Lea, Vela Lea. So this Greenwich Reach and Isle of Dogs are real London river locations. The river is now carrying logs and industrial waste instead of beauty. This continues Eliot's theme of urban decay. And this music, it's a musical refrain. It is adapted from Wagner's German, song. It evokes a mythic, ancient, lyrical mood, and it contrasts with dull, modern world. And here music has become a bridge to the past. Now there is a shift to the Elizabethan glories. Elizabeth, Leicester, beating oars, the stern was formed, a gilded shell, red and gold. So it's like a flash to the 16th century. Queen Elizabeth I and her favorite, the Earl of Leicester, are boating on the Thames. This represents a time when river carried romance, grandeur, and political power. And the boat is richly decorated. Gold is there, bright colors are there, classical beauty and luxury dominate the scene. The brisk swell rippled both shores. Southwest wind carried downstream the peal of bells, white towers. And again there's a refrain, that musical refrain, it returns. This imagery, now the imagery here is, it paints a bright lively river, church bells ringing, white towers along the banks, they're all symbolizing spiritual life. There is a celebration, a proud, powerful England, and the past was majestic and full of culture, unlike the mechanical past. Then we have a refrain here, and it ties the past and present together through memory and song. And the music echoes across time but now sounds ironic and hollow, in contrast with modern decay. So, what's the basically the central meaning here is, because of course we know that there is a decline of civilization, and there is a stark contrast between the Elizabethan time period, and he's not really counting the Victorian period that showcased snobbery, but it is, Eliot is thinking about the romantic era, the Elizabethan era, and he's contrasting it with the modern present, which is polluted, and there's a lot of industrial waste and mechanical routine is there, oil, tar barges, all these things are there. And of course there is a contrast. He is playing with memory and reality also. Beautiful past, and according to Eliot, as if it seems that beautiful past survives only in poetic fragments and music. And because modern life has lost its connection with everything, so now it is experiencing modern fragmentation and all. Now we have come to the end of this, section, the fire sermon. That is the third section of T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland. In this section, we see that there are different fragmented voices. They speak, and these voices represent anonymous Londoners, Teresias memories, modern individuals suffering emotional emptiness. And this section ends with Saint Augustine's confession and the Buddha's fire sermon, reinforcing the theme that modern life burns with the fires of desire and spiritual suffering. Trams and dusty trees, Highbury bore me, Richmond and Kew undid me. By Richmond I raised my knees, supine on the floor of a narrow canoe. So the speaker describes different places in London: Highbury, Richmond, Kew. Trams and dusty trees show a dull, routine urban environment. Highbury bore me. Highbury is where the speaker comes from. Richmond and Kew undid me. These places are associated with emotional decline or possibly sexual encounters. Raised my knees supine in a canoe suggest a sexual act taking place in a boat, a memory of intimacy that feels casual or meaningless. So the theme here is modern relationships are physical only and they lack spirituality. Even nature, Richmond, Kew, offer no moral uplift, only more casual encounters. My feet are at Moorgate and my heart under my feet. After the event, he wept and he promised a new start. I made no comment. What should I resent? What should I resent? So, this is another anonymous speaker, likely a woman. My feet are at Moorgate. She is physically in London. My heart under my feet means she is emotionally crushed, worn down. After a sexual encounter, the man weeps and promises to change. She remains detached. I made no comment. She feels nothing. She has no energy left even to resent or protest. And the theme here is emotional numbness. The wasteland is full of people who no longer feel love, anger, and connection. Sex has become mechanical. Relationships produce only fatigue. On Margate sands, I can connect nothing with nothing. The broken fingernails of dirty hands. My people humble people who expect nothing. On Margate sands, that's a seaside resort in England, she reflects on her life and the most famous line, I can connect nothing with nothing. This expresses fragmentation of thought, inability to form meaning, collapse of personal identity, and the broken fingernails of dirty hands suggests poverty, suffering, tired working class experience, and her existence. My people expect nothing means they have lost hope. They don't dream of a better life anymore. La la, it's a meaningless sound. It symbolizes broken communication, language losing meaning, emotional emptiness. In the wasteland, even speech has lost its power. To Carthage, then I came so. And this line has come from Saint Augustine's Confession. When Augustine says this, he means he came to a place of sin and moral corruption, and that is Carthage. Eliot uses it to parallel London is equal to modern Carthage, modern world is equal to spiritually burning. So burning, 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 burning. O Lord, thou pluckest me out, O Lord, thou pluckest burning. There's a double meaning. And how, see, Eliot here is fusing Saint Augustine, who describes his sinful passions as burning with desire, crying for God to rescue him, and the second is Buddha's fire sermon, where Buddha teaches that the human world burns with the fires of lust, hatred, and ignorance. Liberation requires detachment. So he creates a very powerful image that modern life is spiritually burning. Humanity is trapped in desire and suffering. Rescue is difficult but desperately needed. So, central themes of this passage, this section is, of course, there is a fragmentation in human condition. Voices are broken and incomplete, right? There is a spiritual emptiness. There's a desire and suffering, and how is to be controlled. This has also been told that uncontrolled desire leads to spiritual destruction, and how can and the liberation from this requires detachment. Too much of attachment can lead to more suffering. And there is a repeated cry, O Lord, thou pluckest me out, shows longing for redemption, even in the middle of spiritual ruin. So, in this passage, different speakers describe their empty modern relationships and emotional exhaustion. Life is, we all know that, we have been studying this, that life, according to Eliot, is fragmented, dull, and spiritually dead. On Margaret Sands, one speaker says that she can connect nothing with nothing, showing complete mental collapse. And Eliot then brings in St. Augustine and Buddha, both of whom describe human desire as a fire that consumes the soul. So the section ends with the world burning with desire and a faint cry for salvation.